Hi, my name is Bob Shea, and I'm an author-illustrator, and I wrote the runaway smash hit beloved book Chez Bob.
Welcome to the Picture Booking Podcast. My name is Nick Patton, and I'm honored to introduce today's host, Shawna J. Tenney. Enjoy!
So, Bob, thank you so much for joining us today. I have been so excited to talk to you because I've been a big fan of your work for a long time. I get so many good laughs out of your books. I read your books when I am sad, and they make me feel better. so,
That's really nice of you to
so
say.
thank
No one's
you.
ever said that before. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I aspire to be funny like you when I grow up. So, thank you. uh, let's talk about your book, Chez Bob.
Sure.
I love this book. Tell our audience a little bit about this book, so they kind of know what this story is about.
So in so the title comes from I've had it for a long time, for years. When I used to live in New York City, I would take my laundry to a place, you drop it off, and then you pick it up, and it's all folded and it's all nice cube and it's ready to be put away. It's not a luxurious thing. It's because nobody has a has laundry in New York City, and that's how you have to get it done. Just it's the way that it is. So when you go to pick it up, I would hand them my ticket, and the woman would say "Chez Bob" when she was handing it back to me, and I'd go, "Oh no, that's the laundry of a French restaurant. I'm Bob Shea." And I'm sure she was very happy when I moved away because I would say it every week. And I'd be like, so I'd be walking there, I'd be like, I hope she says Chez Bob today. And so anyway, I had the idea. This is even before I was a picture book author, and I had the idea, and I thought, I don't know where I came up with a. So in the book Chez Bob, an alligator, a lazy alligator, opens up a restaurant on his nose for birds as a way to trick the birds, so the birds land at the restaurant and then he can eat the birds. I think I used to see, the whole symbiotic thing where the birds are on the alligator's snout, and I was like, why doesn't he just eat them? It's like food right there. It's like a source of protein just comes to you. And I think from there I was like, oh, that'd be a good opportunity for me to use the Chez Bob.
I love it. um, yeah, that's I was going to ask you how you came up with that name, but I love your bio in the back where it says, "I promise this has nothing to do with my name."
Did I say it? I haven't read that by in a long time. I can't remember writing that, but I'm sure that that's what it said. I do those very quickly, so I don't remember.
Right, but it was very clever.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk a little bit about our favorite parts of the book. I'll go first.
Okay.
So, I love the spread in the book where Bob wants to get involved with the bird community.
Yeah,
So he coaches the basketball team to be a positive role model, and then he joins the book club to meet like-minded birds.
hmm
And I love the funny detail of that there's one orange bird that just talks too much, and he's like, how rude. I'm totally going to eat him first.
Right. So in the book, Bob opens his restaurant, but it's a success. And so it becomes a popular restaurant, and he slowly forgets his plan to eat the birds. It's always in the background of everything he does, but he wants to get good Yelp reviews and stuff. He doesn't want to be bad, so he definitely he integrates himself into the community. The woods become gentrified, and and he sort of enjoys that as he plans to eat the birds. But yeah, he I thought it would be funny if, well, what if the restaurant takes off? And then like the things that happen as communities build and he wants to be part of this small town. Yeah, so that was fun. I had like a ton of those jokes.
Yeah.
So I just picked those two,
Yeah.
basketball team and book club.
Yeah, the town grows up around Bob. Like the birds build a
Right.
town. I love how there's an extensive transportation system, and he's like, that's weird because they're birds.
Yeah, they could just fly, but there's like light rail. Because that's, if you're planning a new community, light rail always comes up. So I'm like, that, you know what? There's going to be affordable housing and light rail and lots of green space. So I have a lot of bike paths. Sculpture garden. There's like a Calder and a Noguchi sculpture. It's
Yeah,
nice. It looks like a nice place. So like I would like it seems very walkable as well.
yeah,
Community pool.
yeah. Um, Tell me about some of your favorite parts about this book when you wrote it.
It's funny when you I've been doing a lot of school visits lately, so I've been reading it a lot. And sort of you for you forget what you wrote. You don't forget, but you're like sometimes I'm in the middle of reading and I'm like, that's weird that you said that. Like, and I don't like when I'm writing the process of writing it, I'm kind of making myself laugh and trying to be as jokey as I can and being silly and just sort of putting all these ideas down. But what happens in the process is um it becomes a process. Like you're like, okay, I got the text done and I'm going to do the illustrations and how does it flow? And you're focusing on all these things. And you don't like sort of remember that, oh, yeah, that you were trying to be funny there. It was a self, that is a very absurd thing to say. Like it becomes very matter of fact. But through the through line of the book, there's a couple of jokes in there that even now I read them, I'm like, no one said anything about that. At the end, I don't think it's a spoiler if I say he becomes friends with the birds. I think that's pretty expected. But he says, "Oh, thank you." They do something nice for him. He says, "Oh, thank you so much. You are all so sweet, and I should know since I just spit you out." And I'm like, "That's strange." He said that.
That was one of my favorite parts. I love
Oh,
that
good,
so much.
good. That's good. I'm like, man, a lot of time, what I used to do, and I don't do this anymore because it got me in trouble a little bit, which we don't have to talk about. But I used to, I used to be a graphic designer
Hmm.
and an art director, and what I would do, and I would do this in my writing here. I was an art director for Comedy Central, doing print design. So I would write the most outrageous thing that I could because when they dialed it down, it would land in a place that I was happy. Like they're always going to reel you in, so would go so far that when they reeled me in, it would still be super weird compared to the thing that I presented. And so in the books, a lot of times when I present sketches to my editor, I'll just have whatever I feel like writing in there,
Hmm.
and it's not inappropriate in a bad way, but it's just like that's a crazy thing to say. You should not say that. I don't do that anymore because everybody takes everything so seriously now.
Oh.
Like, what I mean? People are like, "Oh my gosh, you see that thing Bob Shea wrote? He's a monster." I'm like, "I'm just kidding. Don't worry about
Yeah.
it." So anyway, so
Mm.
I don't think I did it with this, but I sometimes I'm surprised that um, editors let me put in the jokes that I present. But they're never bad. They're not like things kids can't hear or anything. They're just a different way to look at the world, kind of.
Yeah, yeah. So you were talking about how a little bit about your background. You started out like in did you say it was at television?
Well, I started out in graphic design. I
Oh,
went to
graphic
school.
design.
I went to school for graphic design,
Mhm.
and probably about 5 years, 5 or 6 years into my career, I got a job at Comedy Central doing print design. So I was still a print designer. That was what I went to school for. This is years ago, obviously, back when they printed things.
Yeah.
And I did that because when I first graduated from school, I was like, well, when do I get to write my own ideas and then do that? They're like, you don't get to do that. Do this hospital newsletter. I'm like, oh man, this kind of sucks. I don't want to do this. Why did I throw my life away for art school? And then at Comedy Central, I got to be more creative, and it was, this is years and years ago. I'm really old, so it's pre South Park. So they were just like, do whatever you want. We don't care. We got nothing on air anyway. And I did all these things, and I got to write them and produce them, and it was really fun. So I really liked the autonomy that offered. And then I was a freelance. Uh, I had another job. I designed the PBS Kids logo, the
Oh,
old
cool.
one, the one with the head, the green head.
Yeah.
It was illustrated by Richard McGuire, but I was the original designer of it. And that, putting together all the working with all the PBS Kids stuff, got me into more kids illustration. And I thought it was just super creative, and people were really open to new ideas there, and you could really explore things and do stuff. So that got me into the kids, and I was doing some freelance illustration and art direction. I was doing a lot of stuff then. I was doing websites and all kinds of things. And then finally I started to do the books, and then less design, more books, less design, more books, and now I just do the books.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you started on the art side. How did you get into writing your own story? I mean, you were kind of doing that at Comedy Central, but
I was. You know what the thing is? No one stopped me. That's really the thing. I would just I would just do it and then show people, and be like, and I didn't get much resistance from the writer at Comedy Central. He was fine with it. And you just, I try to explain this, like, I try to explain this to kids, because I didn't become a writer, author, and illustrator, however you want to say it, until I was older. And it's like, yeah, because no one stops you. So you're a grown up. No one cares what you do. No one cares. Like, you can do whatever you want. So when I started writing, no one was like, well, do you have your writing certificate from the committee of writers who decide that now you get to be a writer? No, just write the things down. Just like write. I was doing a blog back when there were blogs like that. I would have to code myself. Like, you just, in HTML, you just code it and post it. I had hosted my own site and posted and stuff. So I had this body of work of these essays, like not for kids, for grown-ups, that were just jokey 3-paragraph joke things. And I got so much work from that. Like, I used to do writing for TV, not for the actual shows, but like Shark Week, and then make jokes about Shark Week and a lot of promo stuff. But all of that I got from the personal writing that I did on this blog, that I just did for a creative outlet. And even the kids book stuff, I had printed out that blog, and I showed it to Lane Smith, who I met by accident. And he was like, wow, this stuff is really funny. And I was like, wow, thank you. And I said, can I show you a kid's book that I wrote? He was like, oh, man, absolutely. So then I had to go write a kid's book, and I did. And he helped me get it published. It was nice of him. He's a nice man.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Have you always like been a teller of jokes? And I mean, has that always been a thing, like being funny?
Yeah, it was always real. It's always really important to me. Yeah, it was always, that was my defining characteristic. It's like, I'm the youngest in my family. I have 2 older brothers, and it's like, you can't beat them physically. You know what I mean? You have to be smarter than them, and they're not. They're very smart and they're very funny, but it's like, you had to be fun. Like, you. And I say a lot too. I see this I see it with my son. He's 19, and I see it with him and his friends. You had to, when I was growing up with my friends, like, you had to earn the laugh. Like, no one would laugh out of like politeness.
Mm-hmm.
They were stone faced. If they laughed, you knew that was involuntary, and they were like, that you earned that. So it's how you process the world when you can't do anything else.
Right.
From your frustration of, man, I have no power in this world, so I'm going to make fun of it. So that's part of how it works.
Yeah. Do you have any like people that you look up to like as funny people, whether it be like actors or comedians or other author illustrators?
Yeah, I do. Again, I'm old, so they're going to be old references. The first thing the couple things that I saw that really made me realize that it was a valid form, however you want to say it, was Monty Python's Flying Circus when I was little kid, and it was on Sunday nights at 10:30, and it was past my bedtime. I was real little, and I would try to stay up. I would like lie in bed with my eyes open, like don't fall asleep, don't fall asleep, and then I'd have to sneak downstairs to where the TV was and keep my ear against the TV so that my parents didn't hear that I was out of bed. They wouldn't have cared. They would have just put me back in bed. But I was like, this is absurd. Like that didn't make any sense. Like these things don't make any sense. They're not funny. Like we're gonna do a funny sitcom thing. I'm like, this is just completely absurd, and I loved it. And then at the same time, I remember when I saw Steve Martin, when I saw The Jerk, I was like, holy cow, that movie still holds up, and it's just so hilarious. And
Yeah.
it's a different way of seeing the world. Like his take on things is so, even in that movie, it's so interesting to be, how did you make that connection, and how did you get from this idea to that conclusion? And it's I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve Martin, he's hilarious. I just saw Dirty Rotten Scoundrels for the first time.
Actually never seen that.
Okay, go watch it on Amazon Prime. It's on
Okay,
Amazon Prime.
well, I have that.
It's so funny. It was just so ridiculous, you know? Okay, so what are some things to try and pay attention to when you're trying to write humor for children?
Well, I don't make a distinction. I usually write it for, I'm not saying this in a selfish way, but I start by writing it for myself so that I don't, and for my friends. I'm like, well, my friends think this is funny, and my humor is never that grown up that it wouldn't be appropriate. So basically I'll try to pay attention to the world, and if I see something or if I say a joke that's funny, I can position it for kids easy enough. Like I don't talk down to them, and I don't try to change my jokes for them, but I just put it in a way that they can understand it in their world.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, because there's so many things that are, if you think about it from a grown-up point of view, that are so absurd in a kid's world, like the limitations that they have and the way that everything's new and stuff, that you can really play around with that reality. And it's fun. It's like and kids are open to everything. Like absurdity works so great with kids because they're not like, that's not true. That's not right. You know what I mean? Like grown-ups ruin everything. They spoil everything. They're like, yeah, I know that's not the way it's supposed to be, but isn't it more fun that way? It's like,
Exactly.
Like the world's so boring. Everything's so boring.
Exactly. I kind of feel that same way about writing for kids. I feel like I'm writing it for myself and for like something that I would love, and then kids love it too.
Is that how you do it as well? Do you
Yeah.
so you don't have a kid in mind when you do it?
Yeah, I don't really.
Yeah.
But maybe I feel like it would be something that I would love when I was a kid. But I feel like I love it still. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I just love picture books so much. My kids are also teenagers. They're 16 and 18, so I just collect tons of picture books for myself, and I love them. So
yeah, I'm in a room full of them right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also they'll be nice again at 19. When they go to college, they come back and they hug you, and they're like, they ask, how are you? And crazy stuff like that. You're like, what happened?
Yeah.
But now, 18 and 16, I'm like, oh man, I'd hide in a room and do a podcast too.
Yep.
And I'm sure they're very nice kids. Don't get me wrong. It's all of them.
No, yes. Teenagers. Yep.
Yeah.
They have to figure out their own things first before they come back to you.
Oh, sure. No. Yeah. Yeah. That's their job. That's their
Yep.
job right now, is to
Yep.
not be pleasant to be around. Yeah.
So do you work on your words first? You kind of said that you maybe had the words down first and then the pictures, or is it?
It depends. It's so weird because I'm not. It's a combination of both. So in my notebooks, it's little sketches and whatever idea is funny. The way that my brain processes it, it's like, oh, that would be a funny little drawing, and then like little character could have a funny little expression, I, or a sentence, or the way two words work together, or whatever. Because I'm not, I'll tell you, it's one of these things where I'm like, you're not. It's the upside of thinking you're a fraud. I'm like, I could do whatever I want. I don't know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like, here's how a writer would do it. Like, well, you're not a writer anyway, so who cares? Get a story down on paper and draw some pictures.
I love it. I love that easygoing attitude on yourself, not putting too much pressure on yourself.
Well, because what's the alternative? You know what I mean? It's like I
Hmm.
talked to some of my author and illustrator friends, and they all have the same concern, and they're all like, what if this isn't good enough, and what if blah blah blah? And I'm like, yeah, okay, what if it's not?
Hmm.
Right, then it's not. Like, you have to still write it down. Like,
Right.
I'm like, get don't get in your own way. Like, and I don't mean that it's good, like, oh, I don't care because I know my work is so good. I'm like, well, I'll see that it's bad at the end, and I'm a pretty good judge of my own stuff. And if not, my friends will tell me because they're my friends, and they'll go, yeah, no, you missed the mark. This is terrible. I don't know what you're doing.
It's
You know?
great to have friends that can let you know.
Yeah. No, I think that's important.
Yeah.
If if I send stuff to somebody and they write back, oh, it's brilliant and you're so good and it's so funny and this is great, I don't send them stuff anymore. It's like, I have a group who will tell me and tell you honestly, and not to try to impress you with how smart they are. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, wait till he hears my
Hmm.
interesting observation. They're just like, I see what you're trying to do here. It didn't work. I didn't get this joke. I got confused here. It's too long. It's dumb. Whatever it
Yeah.
is, but they just tell you, and they don't, and they're not, no, not being judgmental. They're not like, you're terrible. They're like, this thing that you did didn't work. And that happens more times than not.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, it's so important to have good critiquer friends.
hmm Do you
Yeah.
do that? Do you have like a small group, or?
Yeah, I have an illustration critique group, and then I have a picture book writing critique group, and
Yeah.
they've both been like so good in helping me improve things and get them better. And
hmm
yeah.
Do you have anyone in your family that you show it to?
Um Not to get critiqued.
Yeah, it's tougher.
Yeah, I
There's
mean,
an extra layer.
yeah, I used to show it to my husband. He's also a graphic designer, but I can only show it to him at a certain point, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, if your husband was creative, because like my wife is a very talented art director, and I don't show her stuff. I should. It would benefit me, but I get mad, and I'm a
Yeah.
big baby, and then I sulk for 2 days, and then I do what she said.
Right, right.
But but my
That's
friends, I
happened to
don't have
me.
that reaction. I mean, but my friends, I'm like, oh yeah, that was good. I see that. I get that. But with my wife, I'm like, it's not like that. No, no. I don't. It's not that bad, but
It's like
it's a lot harder when you have all those other things.
it's like too close emotionally.
It's too
When
close. Yeah.
yeah. the one thing I was going to ask you about, like writing and illustrating, this is going to another one of your books, but like I'm just curious how you decided on like your Who Wet My Pants book. How did you decide to have someone else illustrate that?
Yeah, so Who Wet My Pants? In that book, there's a bear who wets his pants. I don't want, not to spoiler, it was him. And he blames his, like, accuses his friends the whole book, like, relentlessly. And they're cool about it, and they're like, "Hey man, it happens to everybody. I used to wet my pants all the time." And he's like, "Oh really? Wet pants are old hat, are they?" You know? And and another one that's, it's just absurd. And so Zach and I are friends, and I wanted to work with Zach O'Hara for a really long time. Like, he's like, "We got to find a book to do together." And in my I had this sketch for a long time. I had it written out. I had the idea, and I was going to draw it. But you know what the problem is? It's called Who Wet My Pants, and my style is a little cartoony. And people would dismiss it and be like, "Oh, it's a potty training book." You know what I mean? And so
Okay.
his very grounded, more solid characters in a more defined, solid world sort of gave the story the gravitas that it deserved. So, like I said, my background is art direction, creative direction, design. I know when I'm not right for a project. You know what I mean? Like, I know
That's
I'm not
good.
like I could draw anything. Like, no, I know what things work and what don't. I, and Zach, just, oh my, I love that book so much. I'll tell you, when somebody else does your stuff for you, not for you, when they collaborate with you, I don't want to sound like he did it for me. You get this thing, and it's like it's a gift. It's like, because you have this impression of your head of here's how it should look, and then this other, like, amazingly creative person, like, takes what you did and it filters it through their brain, and you're just like, that was great. Like, I love that book so much. I read it to kids all the time. And
Yeah.
because of Zach's all the and I point that out to kids when I do school visits. I'm like, "See this stuff? I didn't write that. Zach thought of that stuff. Like, he did that. Like, that's him." So it's when you work with a friend and do a book, you both have to make something, put something into it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um,
Yeah,
I hope that
it's
maybe
fun.
someday I can, say, "Oh, this book isn't. It needs to be illustrated by someone else," and
Yeah.
try it out.
Do you never think that?
I haven't yet, but
Yeah.
I need to. I mean, there's like the sort of books that I haven't written yet that I
Yeah.
think I want to write
Right.
that might be better for someone else to illustrate.
Yeah, that
So,
makes sense. Yeah, I see. Like even so, in a different way, I just did a series. It's called A Durable, and it's puppies in construction vehicles. And I tried to draw that, and I was like, it's not right. You're doing a terrible job. And Brian Wan illustrated it, and it was completely the right choice. But I think I don't know. I think that also my style is all over the place a lot of times, and my writing is always sounds like me, but it's always different. So
mm-hmm.
I'm not always anxious to draw it on my own. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I
Uh huh.
don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm lazy.
After writing so many books, do you feel like I mean, has the writing process gotten easier, or is it still a struggle for you?
I think it's still a struggle. I think that the the thing that's easier is the awareness of what's working, what's not working, and you can make mistakes faster.
Hmm.
Like I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try this direction, and I'll write it all out, and I'll be like, that's terrible. But in your head, you will not admit that it's terrible. There's a voice shouting in the back of your head that like is like, this is terrible. It's terrible. And there's a voice in front that's blocking that out, going, it's got a beginning, a middle, and the end. You're going to get to the end of it, and it's really good. And then you get and you put it away for a couple of days, and you're like, what was I doing? It's like terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. Has the submission process gotten easier since people are more
Um,
aware maybe of your work? Or
yeah. Yes. It's the industry's different. It it seems. It's not that it's gotten harder, but it's slower. I don't know. I think since the pandemic, it's like, man, everything takes 5 times as long now to hear back or to just do what. Like, oh, that's weird.
yeah.
But I think that because I've done so many, people have an expectation of what to get, so it's easier. So there's more. It's a smaller pool to choose from because there's certain editors who'd want what I have to offer, but they know what they're getting. So that part makes it a little easier. Yeah, it's sort of a lot of times if it gets through the gauntlet of my friends, my revisions, and then I send it to my agent, if he says thumbs down, I usually forget about it because I'm like, I hate to push things through and be like, I think this is great. I'm like, I might think this is great, but he had a huge problem with it and somebody else is gonna. So move on to the next thing. And if he has a positive reaction to it, it it generally means someone's gonna be interested in it. Do you know what I
That's
mean? So
yeah.
he's a good gauge.
Yeah.
And that's what I want. I don't want him to just send out, yeah, okay, you sent me another one, I'll send it out, tell you what they say. He's like, I don't know, man. I wouldn't do this if I were you. You know what I mean? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Sounds like you're matched with a good agent that
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
good
because
for you.
all agents are different. Do you have an agent or do you work
Yeah. Yeah,
and
I
are
do.
they because they're all different, are they more collaborative and they give you notes and tell you to change it, or are they more thumbs up, thumbs down? I've heard people have different ones.
Um she she's really good at being like, this isn't working yet and this is why,
Mm-hmm.
and so I go back and rewrite the whole thing.
Sure.
Which is it's great. So
Sure
it
do.
helps it be
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard, but it's good. It's really good to have an agent that knows, what's working and what's not.
Yeah. That kind of feedback is can be helpful.
Yeah.
Like I said, I generally try to have most of that ironed out to a degree. There's usually one or two things like he's like, you can't say that line or you can't have this happen. They're minor edits by the time it gets to him, but I know some people their agents are more collaborative and more engaged in the process.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, she does help with like my edits and stuff before we send it out. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so kind of
It's
collaborative.
good because then the both of you are confident about it and she can send it out with more, you know, enthusiasm, really.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, I want to talk a little bit about the illustrations in Chez Bob. Going
Sure.
back to Chez Bob.
Okay. Sounds
So,
good.
I read the how the illustrations were made, and it says the illustrations in this book were done in a comfortable chair while listening to records.
Hold on, I'll show you. There's the record player, and there's the comfortable chair behind
Oh,
me.
wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks.
He really
There it
does
is.
have a record player, so
Yeah,
yeah.
there's my record player. Yep,
That's cool.
keeps me focused.
Nice.
Yeah,
So, did you do these? They look digital. Are they digital?
yeah. They're done in Procreate. I
Okay.
generally work. analog for actually, I've been using Procreate a lot for my sketches lately, but usually I always have a notebook with me, like I just put it together out of like copy paper, and I have a binding machine that I got. Oh my gosh, I must have got it 20 years ago. It's just a big cast iron thing, and you like put rings on stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And so I always have a notebook with me that I draw on, and I'll generally do sketches like that just for the immediacy of it. And then I go to Procreate.
I'm just wondering what kind of brushes do you enjoy working with in Procreate?
Yeah, it's funny because when you first, for people who don't use Procreate, it's very, and I'm sure people know this, it's very mimics natural media really well, like better than Photoshop, because that's its job to do that. Like, it's not a photo editing program, it's an illustration program, and pencils and brushes and everything really are great. So that's great. The downside is it's overwhelming. Like, there's way, way, way too many choices. And I think I think people run into a problem with that. I've had talked to people about that because illustrators are boring, and we sit around and talk about that stuff. So what I generally do is I have maybe 5 brushes that I use for everything.
Yeah.
And I've had the little settings to them, nothing even that dramatic. And I just use those because they do everything I need to do. Do you know what I mean? And if I
Yeah.
get if I get too fancy and start to really be like, I have a very special brush, it's like, well, it just doesn't, it's not good. Like, if you just use, there was a time when Procreate not first came out, I don't know, but probably I'd say about 7 or 8 years ago. Maybe even that's too far. I can't remember time. And everything looked very Procreate-y. I was like, yeah, I was done to Procreate. It all had a similar stuff. Everybody was like, it's like, you can really draw whatever. You don't have to do that style, which was very pretty. But I was like, well, another one of those. I better not do that because they all look the same.
Yeah.
And so I think now people are realizing that it's just a bunch of pencils and brushes and paper, but digital, but just this easier workflow, so I can sit in a chair and do it. Are you digital? Do you use Procreate and stuff?
Yeah,
Or you?
I kind of I like to lay my colors in Photoshop because I feel like I can get better colors in Photoshop, and then I go to Procreate, do the rendering, brush the brush rendering, and then I come back to Photoshop and sometimes lay in like the transparency layers and stuff if I'm using those, because I like how they work better in Photoshop. So I kind of go back and forth, but I love the feel of painting, the painting part in Procreate.
Yeah, that's really smart. That's the biggest hurdle in Procreate is the color management is horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
There's no workflow for an actual project, and you have to like jump through hoops to send it to Photoshop and then color correct it. And I have to get a efficient workflow where I can do the way you're talking about, because it's always a train wreck at the end.
I also don't like how in Procreate, when you resize things, they pixelate.
Duh, you can't.
Yeah.
You erase it, draw it again.
Uh-huh.
It is not, when you first come from Photoshop, which is a delightful, well executed, professional design program, whatever you want to call it. And then you go to Procreate, you're like, oh, how come everything's crappy now?
Why is
And you have to
so
learn
fuzzy?
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I see that with a lot of like beginning illustrators. They're doing the resizing in Procreate, and they're not noticing how it's really fuzzy in places and stuff.
Yeah, it's blurry now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the color palette in Chez Bob. I love how Bob is yellow. He's a yellow alligator.
Yeah.
And
So,
also how you didn't leave white in your backgrounds. Tell us about that.
thank you for noticing that. Yeah, there's two things that I think are my weakest things, and it's composition and color. So when I did Chez Bob, I just watched endless YouTube videos on composition and color. And they're very boring and very helpful.
Hmm.
They're both, and I would send, like, I'd see a composition video and I'd get all excited about it. And I'd like send it to Lane Smith and I'd be like, look how cool this is. Is this what you do? This is so cool. He's like, ugh. It's like art school. He's like, what are you watching that for? I'm like, because I can't do it. I'm terrible at it. But it was really helpful. So the colors, when I did the colors, I was really conscious of it. And I like to make Bob yellow because it's like I get mad at myself when I make things the colors they're supposed to be. I get mad. I'm like, that's the best you could do is because you look at because I like I'll have a Pinterest board of illustration I like and stuff, and it's always and this is just the way people are. It's always stuff that I don't do. You know what I mean? It's like because my brain doesn't think that way, and it's always really like primitive and it's always super graphic. I always like graphic things because I'm a graphic designer. I just love flat fields of color and simplicity and just simplicity that still feels organic. And so I chose the colors very intentionally throughout the book, or I hope that I did. And making him yellow, I love the color yellow, and yellow really works in a lot of situations. Like it pops off a lot of things, and you can put colors on top of it, and it really worked. Like I did a series of dinosaur books, started with Dinosaur Bedtime, and he's red. Like I like to just be like, this character is yellow. Like you are this color. And that's it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Glad you noticed that.
And I liked how you also like paid attention to like the different feelings in the different parts of the book. So like when he's sad. Also, I have to say something about the sad part. It was my favorite part
Right.
when he imagined a sad song in his head.
Right. Yeah. Because I think I had, thank you. Thank you. That's another one. I'm like, where did I come up with that? Or why
so
did I
funny.
say that? Not like I'm a genius. Where did I come up with that? But like, I just was like, man, I think it was more complicated. It was like, since Bob didn't have a radio, I like explained, and it was funny. And sometimes they're like, they are literal, which is good because I'm not, I'm like, they'll get it. But yeah, Bob imagined a sad, lonely song in his head and tried to fall asleep all by himself. I've been reading it a lot, so I know the line. But yeah, he looks super sad there because he's like got a closed sign on his nose.
Yeah.
And he's in the background with a closed sign on his nose. He's got a towel around his waist because he just came out of the water. It doesn't make any sense. And then there's the birds in there, very modern, affordable housing, bird nest condominium structure. And they're all happy and excited from playing. And Bob's way over in the background, like, oh, those birds I'm going to eat are having so much fun. I hope they invite me for a sleepover sometime. It's just, thanks. Yeah, I tried to. It's funny because the other thing I was into a lot was like the hero's journey, like of writing and all the beats involved in the hero's journey. So I'm like, all right, he needs a dark night of the soul, and there needs to be the whiff of death, and all those things that are either helpful or contrived, depending on how you look at it. And so Chez Bob, like his hero's journey the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah, and but it's like it's like really dark blue, and just so it is like the dark night of the soul.
And it's
literally.
he's starting to he's starting his transformation is almost done. And that dark blue, that was I loved illustrating that spread because the dark background really let all the other things pop. Like he's yellow, and I don't make him full on yellow in that. I make him darker in the background, but you could make it be a lot moodier. And then the bird's nest, it had all string lights, and the birds are colorful and stuff, and it really made that seem very lively and vibrant and active. But then he's over to the side, and he's in shadow and stuff. It's all very cinematic.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love it. It's very effective.
It's fun. And it cracks me up. Like I draw because I'm like, isn't it funny if it's like really dark and he's really sad? Like it just makes me laugh. Like I'm not like because I'm a genius and I just like, it's just like, would it be funny if this were really cinematic? Like it was more, you know,
It is funny.
pretend that it's not, it's not like a little story that I'm telling.
Yes. And
Anyway.
okay, another thing I just have to point out is that in the beginning he's like imagining how awesome he'll be and that he will have diamond teeth and a gold hat.
Solid gold hat, yeah.
And then he has kind of this other really sad moment that's all like done in like kind of grays and blues where he has, we won't spoil what's happening, but
Right.
he's also imagining oh, maybe it would be silly for me to have diamond teeth now and a gold hat.
Right. Right. He's starting to see that maybe those
Yeah.
aren't the important things in the world.
Yes.
In life. Those aren't the important things in life. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like at the end you bring up the like the really happy colors or like the bright colors.
Yeah, for the final act. Yeah.
Yes.
That's all very intentional. And that one, the image that you're talking about when Bob knew exactly what he had to do, and it's just his head sort of silhouetted, and it's all the blues and stuff. When I draw things like that, I feel as though I should draw like that more. You know what I mean? Like when I do a drawing that's okay, he's standing here, and here's the ground, and here's some trees in the back, and it feels like framed like a photograph. I'm disappointed at the end because I'm like, oh, I wish it were more graphic and what am I trying to say? It just was more just emotional and not so literal, and it was more abstract and more interpretive. And I am always jealous when I see that in a book because I'm like, oh, you dropped the ball on that. You didn't think about those things. You were just telling the story.
Yeah.
But then I show that thing and it's Bob, and it's happened last week in a school visit. I was reading that and the kid's like, why is he blue? Like, because he's yellow the whole time. It's like because he's sad, so it's all these blues. Why is he blue? And I'm like, I don't know, man. They messed up. They printed it blue. I wish he was yellow so bad.
I think it's perfect for the mood, and you only show his head.
Yeah,
And
it's really
that's all you need. Like that's all you need to show the emotion and of that moment.
And that's the thing. And it's like I just I wish that I were better at doing that. And I always, that's the place where I hold myself back because I'm like, man, they're never gonna go for this. It's too like artsy or graphic, whatever you want to say. And they loved that part, and they were like, do more of that. What are you doing? Like whenever I throw in something that's a little more, I guess, thoughtful like that or something, people get behind it, and I'm like, I preemptively think that they're not going to like it, so I give them what I think they want. And a lot of times they're like, or I'll even change it. I'll do something I want to do and I'll change it thinking that they're, in my head, I have their voice being like, no one understands what that is. And a lot of times to their credit, they'll tell me to change it back. They're like, what are you doing? You can make it interesting. Nobody's stopping you. Like, well, I think my abilities are. And they're like, okay, well but you're allowed to.
I I think we all do that. Like we get like the voice of what we think other people want in our heads. Like
Yes.
I get that so much. Like, are they gonna hate this? This is like different than I usually do, or I don't know if I should change what I usually do because you hear all the time, like, as you're like a beginner, like, you need to keep your style so consistent and you need to keep, and you think that means like all your images need to be the same type of thing, like.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yes. And it's and you'll know as like an author illustrator, there's a lot of moving parts, and it's hard to keep them all the cylinders firing at 100% and being like, you're so excited that you got the manuscript locked or whatever, that you're like, oh yeah, I was less attentive to the compositions, and I got from beginning to end, and I hit all these points I wanted to hit, but can these drawings be better? What's a better way to do this? And it's a process. It takes a long time. It's like not, it's easy to forget what it is you're trying to do, and what you want to do, and do what you think they want, because it's the path of least resistance. If you're like, what would they want me to do?
Right.
I don't.
We're coming to kind of the end of our time. I just want to kind of ask you maybe what your plans are for the future. Do you have more picture books that you're excited about? You don't have to tell us specifically, but are you writing stories that you're excited to get out in the world soon, or?
I am. I'm actually right now. I'm working on the sequel to Chez Bob,
Yes.
which I'm excited about. And now that we had this conversation, I got to go back and be like, all these drawings are terrible.
No,
you should make these better. What's the matter with you?
Get those other people's voices out of your head.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. But then, because like every once in a while in a project, I'll just sit and I'll look through all the things that I like. I know it's a podcast, can't hear, but like that stack of books down there, that's all like things I steal from. Mm-hmm. And then I'll be like, oh, look at how good everyone else is. So yes. I have that. I do have a few books that I'm excited about. I feel like maybe the industry's coming around since COVID. Like it's slow to get the gears of this giant machine going again, but I feel like things are coming around, and yeah, I feel pretty positive.
Yeah, that's good.
trying to keep it going till I could old enough for my 401k. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Gonna keep, as long as people keep wanting the books, I'm like, all right, they want another one of these.
I want them.
No, okay. You know what I mean?
You gotta keep writing, at least just for me, because.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Now, I don't know. I hope I can do it for a long time. I really like doing it's fun, and people are nice. Like, you're really nice, and everybody in this industry is really nice, right?
Yeah.
They really are the nicest people. Like, very few. I've been doing this almost 20 years now, and very few people who I'm like, oof, man, I don't like that person. Most people are like in all stages, like other creators and people in the publishing industry, are just really like just want to all want the same thing. They want to make good work, and it's great. And I've been in other industries too, and I'll tell you, publishing, it's pretty great.
Yeah. So let's end on this question. What do you hope that kids and their parents reading it together will enjoy about Chez Bob?
I just hope they laugh. I think when my son was little, we would read Laurie Keller books all the time, and he'd pick them off the shelf because when he'd hand them to me and I'd read them, I'd crack up. And he thought that was the best. He was like, I know he liked them too, but he was like, he'd pick that because he's like, gonna give you a break from the Polar Express to read Arnie the Donut. And I would just laugh and laugh. So I want parents, I want them to find common ground with things that are funny and have a nice experience together. You know, they've been all day has been stress and make things to do and have to go somewhere at a certain time and do something. And then, you know, when you're going for bed, hey, it's a nice time together and, you know, laugh over
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. I have my husband read your books to me because he does all the voices. And
Oh, good.
we read Chez Bob, Who Wet My Pants, and Unicorn Thinks He's Pretty Great. And we just laugh together and have a good time together. So
Oh, that's nice. I'm glad. Thank you for saying that.
I'm sure that kids and their parents will have a similar experience. Thank you for
Oh,
writing this book.
thank you. Thanks for talking to me today. That was really nice. Thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.